Hello and welcome to Noni, Yanga's flagship talk show where we discuss all the hot topics. Today we take a look at one of our favourite subjects on the show, fashion. We discuss the rise of African fashion shows in the UK and the growth in popularity of African designers across the world. Joining me today, designer and stylist Samson Shoboye and press director for African Fashion Week London, Anna Marie Benedict. Looking stylish, I must say.
Thank you.
Cute.
When we refer to European style, we always specify that it's Italian or British, but African fashion, whether it's Nigerian, Ethiopian or Ghanaian, is generally labelled as simply African. So is it down to us to educate the media and fashion industry on the differences and nuances? Anna Marie, let me come to you because, of course, African Fashion Week London, really big celebration of the continent's fashion. And do you think it is a bit tiring and dull to just label African fashion under one kind of label? Should we be saying this is Ghanaian, this is Senegalese?
Yeah, and I also think it's a bit lazy to do that as well.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's very easy for people to understand African fashion and African prints because they see so much of it.
Yeah.
And that nuances doesn't necessarily translate through a designer. They could get a wax print, and you can have a Ghanaian designer and a Nigerian designer, and they do the same print but different styles. So I think that's where it can be a little bit complicated. But then you see some of the prints that are coming out of South Africa that are traditional.
Yes,
and some of
they should be specified.
And they should be specified.
Yeah.
And also there's a lot of indigo print work, going in Ghana, and that should be specified as well. So I think it's just a little bit lazy and a little bit easy, as you say.
Yeah, it's time for a change. We need to say exactly where everything's from.
Absolutely.
Sam, you are a friend of Yanga, a friend of the channel.
I am
Hi,
indeed.
nice
Thanks
to have
for
you
having
on.
me.
Finally, you're so
Finally.
busy. You're fashionably late. But people wouldn't know because of the way you look, but you graduated over 20 years ago. And it was in the UK, and you are a fashion connoisseur. Tell us a little bit about what African fashion is. How do the West, the English, the Scottish, the Welsh, how do they define African fashion?
Well, a lot of it has been defined by the print, and I think it makes it easier and palatable for them to understand what African fashion is. But Africans that are doing it are doing other things with, as Anna Marie says, with the indigo, with the adiri, with asha oke, which is a traditional woven Nigerian fabric, and they're using that in more contemporary ways, and that's giving Nigerian fashion certainly an identity. Ghanaian, we talk about kente cloth, talk about the prints again, and embroidery is also used in the fashion. So it's always using all these different hand embroidered techniques to get the message across, but using more contemporary styles, which gives it an update.
Yeah, of course, Anne-Marie, we're talking about nuances, and you said that sometimes it would be difficult, and you can understand that for the West to be able to try and decipher what's what. But, with something like African Fashion Week, and we'll talk more about that after the break, do you see the differences in the designers from where they're from? Can you kind of say that, she's from Uganda, you can see it in the clothes or in the way they act?
In the embellishments, maybe, but even for me, it is a little bit tough. And I would say it's also because the designers are so creative, and they're pushing all kinds of boundaries that the West doesn't push. That you can't really specify. Sometimes you can't specify where a designer is from because they're so avant-garde with their designs and things like that. So for me, no, not always. I can't always pinpoint where a designer is from.
And if we can't, I suppose why should the West not? But let me ask you this, Sam, because of course, again, you were at Vogue before Edward. We had those late night discussions, and you were. But Naomi Campbell, really good friend of Edward. I want to be her friend also. She said there needs to be an African Vogue. Forget saying, okay, I'm going to say that this Vogue is all to do with black people or this, that and the other, or having a black man edit it. We need to have our own Bible. Do you think Africa's ready for that?
Well, I mean, it's so big a continent, African, to have African Vogue. Who would actually host it? Where would the headquarters be? You have Italian Vogue, you have British Vogue, you have French Vogue, you have Greek and all the even smaller Spanish Vogue. So why would there not be a Nigerian Vogue, a Ghanaian Vogue? Even a South African Vogue, a Kenyan Vogue. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Why be lazy again and clump it all
Yeah.
together?
Yeah.
Even you can have, there's even Romanian Ukraine Vogue,
Yeah,
you know, so.
Of course. Oh, but we don't have, I just came back from Nigeria and there are lots of glossies there, but we don't have a fashion Bible though. And even if, I get what you're saying, you know, we shouldn't really just lump it. And you can imagine the arguments. Is it going to be in Ethiopia? Is it going to be in Nigeria? But we need to start with something. Don't you think? I'm sure, you know, after many of your events, you're like, God, where we wish that this could be clumped somewhere so that people can, you know, have a look through and see kind of all the amazing designers that they missed.
we're still having the argument about where jollof rice.
We know it's
can't get the
Nigerian. I know.
But
yeah.
seriously though, if we started somewhere, then that would be, if African Vogue did exist, then there could be sections within it, a Kenya section, Nigeria section, or a West Africa section,
Or even
East Africa section.
even the North Africans, you know, the
Exactly.
Maghreb.
So then that could be a start, but definitely is needed. We definitely need a high-end publication that will define Africa. There's a magazine called Natal. I don't know if anyone's seen that.
Yes,
It's,
yes.
Helen Jennings has put that out, and that's a really kind of contemporary view on Africa, much more than I've ever seen before. So that's a good one to have a
Avant-garde,
look.
very high end. So
Very
it's really
high.
good. Anna Marie, your surname doesn't seem African, but I can see you are a Pan-Africanist. So maybe you'll be okay to answer this question. Who dominates African fashion? Nigerians sometimes think they do. I don't know if it's just our way, you know, like we dominate jollof rice.
It's the Nigerians.
But if, you know, when on the catwalks and behind the scenes, who really is taking African fashion to another level?
I think the South Africans
wow.
are a step ahead, but is that because of the European influence?
Yeah.
More than likely. But
What is it about their designs?
I think they're more palatable, and I think they do a lot less print.
Okay.
Samson, help me out here.
Yeah,
I
the
mean,
South Africans. I mean, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day who happens to be South African, and she was saying that they don't identify with the African print because South Africans have not worn clothes for very long. So they
that was 16. That was in some shade there, was it?
where's the sunglasses?
Those are her words. And so
part of the
200
discussion.
years and not more than that. And she was saying that they're known for, what's a South African cloth, for example?
They what do you call it? The
Over to the fashion expert.
So,
I can't.
so their fashion industry is much more newer, I say, much more embryonic.
There's less of a foundation of
Yeah.
having to do this. Talking about the foundation, what about the print? I see you've got some print here. You know, viewers of the show will know that I love, you know, promoting an Ankara or a print. Anna Marie, are people tired of the print? Are we tired of seeing, you know, Dutch wax and Ankara on the catwalk?
Well, it's funny you should say that, because if you look closely to what I'm wearing, it's actually
Beautiful, by the way.
a woman wearing a gele in a.
Oh wow!
Can you see that?
Yeah,
Some people don't actually see that.
Yeah.
And this was made by a Nigerian textile designer who lives in one small village in Canada, and she says she does all these amazing prints and amazing textiles, but because she says she misses Nigeria so much that this is her way of remembering her aunties and her, you know, and her family. So. Are they tired of print? No, I don't think anybody will ever be tired of print. But is print evolving? Yes.
It is.
Absolutely.
And we can see it here, and I think I'm gonna borrow that after the show. Well, still to come, we take a look at the rise of African fashion shows in the UK. See you after the break. Welcome back to Noni. Coming up, we take a look at shows such as Arise Fashion Week and African Fashion Week London and the role they play in celebrating the growth of African fashion. But first, let's get straight back to our discussion. We were saying, Samson, off the camera, that, you know, South Africa, for example, we said, you know, their designers are up and coming and they're, you know, they're taking risks and, you know, breaking boundaries. But you said that may have something to do with the infrastructure. Elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, their infrastructure is really tight. They've got electricity, they've got running water, they've got great
And that sounds like a
buildings
joke,
and
but
roads.
it's serious.
I mean,
No,
I'm not putting down any other African country that doesn't have it. But yes, we understand that, you know, if you don't have the infrastructure, it's really hard to, you know, just get on with your day-to-day living. You know, the traffic jams in Lagos, the sewage and sort of things that are improving, but they're not at the stage that South Africa is, for example. So they've had longer to kind of get their act together, if you like. So we're catching up. But the Nigerians have a history of dressing up. They love to party. They have a history of like showing out. So clothes and fashion and style has always been in there. It's part of their DNA.
Yeah. I've got to ask Anna Marie, what about the money? You know, fashion, I suppose you have to get to the top of the game before you start making money. But do you think that's one of the big issues for young African designers, the fact that it just takes so long to make a bit of money, so sometimes they kind of drop off
collections are expensive, and that is a problem. There was a McKinsey report out maybe about 10 years ago that said that the African fashion industry was worth billions.
Wow.
Billions. So where's that money going to and where's it coming from, you know? We have a lot of the major fashion houses like Calvin Klein and JCPenney in the States that they outsource to Ethiopia to do a lot of their garment sewing and apparel sewing. So
you would never have known that.
You would have never have known that, but it is a big industry in East Africa.
Not everything is happening in China.
No.
Sam, what about you? I've got to say, you know, you're earning the coins. I see your social media. You know, you've got, no, but it's true. You've got commercial deals. You know, you're on mainstream television. You've got celebrities wearing your clothes. You're storing Shoreditch. You know, you go in there and it really, it's costing money. How are you managing to do it?
Well, it is a huge investment, but I put back what I get in. So there's not any limo waiting for me outside. I don't take private jets. Just the Bentley, just one, just one. But I am reinvesting back into it with e-commerce, trying to get the website up and running, investing in the shows like Africa Fashion Week so that I've got the exposure. And also, you know, we talked about, are we tired of the print? I can never get tired of the print. It's not. It's not about the print. It's how you use the print.
Yeah.
So I'm using contemporary cuts, making it more westernized in its silhouette. So not just like as your designer, just grab a print and make a dress, and then you're a designer. It's finding new ways of using the print.
Of course. Do you then think though, Anna Marie, that a lot of young African designers would put a print in the collection just to please the person who they know is gonna be looking for that? You know, somebody who wants to wear something that's obviously African.
It's all about marketing, and why not? You know, and why not? But as Samson said, it's not. It's the way they use it. You know, you can get some designers who are quite traditional, and you know they'll use the same print throughout that entire collection, and then you'll get another couple of designers that will come up with something you say, "Wow, I want that." I mean, for example, Samson's wearing a kimono, style top. I mean, that's Japanese at the end of the day, but and who would have thought about putting a Japanese
appropriation? Is that? I'm dead.
Samson's got his own country.
You just borrowed a little bit of it. No, but it looks fabulous. But you know, before we move on, you know, 20 years in the industry, 20 years,
20 plus,
20 plus years. How's it changed, London? Are you seeing more African fashion on the streets?
I'm definitely seeing a lot more African fashion on the streets, not necessarily on Africans. Lots of Europeans are wearing it. In fact, I think more Europeans are wearing it. Wow. The Africans are actually shying away from it and more into streetwear. And whereas they think this is all a bit pastiche. It's more like cultural embracement for me, cultural celebration, rather than sort of denying our roots. Just to celebrate it. This is where it's all, you see people in the market. I mean, it's funny you should say that, 'cause rich Nigerians would not be seen in Ankara. It's all about their labels and their kind of expensive lace. So it's kind of a denim of Africa. But if you use it in a way that's celebrating, it can be seen as styling it in a way that, I mean, as you've seen on my social media, I've just been dressing Nile Rodgers in it. He's been wearing celebrities are embracing it as well. The Americans are looking back to their roots and thinking, how can I identify? How can I lock into that trend?
And it's just a little bit on the sleeve, and they've done their bit. African Fashion Week London, now in its 8th year, holds 52 designer shows across the first weekend in August. Celebrating designers from across the continent, it is changing perceptions of what African fashion is today. So is the media watching and taking note of the power and growth of African influence? I've got to come to you first. Let's talk about African Fashion Week London.
Yeah.
It's not just for kind of like, you know, the fashion connoisseurs. It really is for the entire family.
It's a family-friendly show. And yeah, we were crazy surprised about last year because we were historically in Olympia. We were in Olympia for 3 years, and you know that's a massive empty venue space that you put your show inside. But last year we decided, okay, let's move away from Olympia. A little bit difficult to get to in the weekends, so let's come more central London. And what better than Freemasons Hall, which is home to Fashion Scout for the London Fashion Week. So we just inquired, and they said yes. We're so happy for you to come along. And we did, and we were packed out, honestly, jam-packed. But it was amazing, and you know, all loved the Freemasons Hall because they looked after us so well. And
you're clearly going from strength to strength. 8 years in, Sam. Why is it so important? We say that a lot. Why is it necessary? But seriously, you know, a fashion week like this and a show like this. What is the importance for young African designers and old ones?
Well, you mentioned London Fashion Week. They haven't embraced African designers. Lots of students, black students, African students, Caribbean students, have not been given the platforms and the venues to show in. So we don't. Have you seen any African?
Why though?
Maybe they don't have the money to show. I mean, it's expensive to show at London Fashion Week.
I'd hate to want to say institutional racism, but
no, but we're having an honest chat here. Would you say it could be?
It could be something to do with that. They don't have the access or the right knowledge or how to access the funds to show and being part of those platforms that are there. So I think this is really important that, you know, we're embracing the young black talent that is in the UK and in Africa and giving them the showcase that they deserve.
But even if you're talking about the young black talent and those that don't have the funds, there are many designers, top-end designers, people that couldn't even come and they were flying in all of their clothes. So really, even in the African fashion world, some of these shows are still a bit elitist, aren't they?
Well, if you're in Nigeria, you come from money to be a designer. You really can't be a designer and not be like financing it. So yes, it is an elitist thing. I don't think that's ever going to change.
Okay.
Across the board, you do need to have some sort of capital to make it happen. Material costs, studio costs, staff costs, sampling costs, it all adds up. And so it's do it for the love of it and if you have the passion for it, but if you're wanting to make a quick buck,
it's not
might
gonna
not be the one for you.
Sam, what was it like then, you know, 20 years ago, you know, when you had just graduated? But the fact, you know, we've spoken, you know, before, you were at Vogue, you know, you were having all of these fantastic internships and flying to the best places. But how did you manage to do that? Were you literally kicking and screaming? Yeah. Were there opportunities? Were there other blacks pulling you up the ladder? Or was it just luck?
Well, I think you need a healthy dose of like, I'm not taking no for an answer.
Yeah. And a thick skin.
A thick skin, and just I'm going to do this by hook or crook. So you just got to make your way, not politely on the door, kick the door down, and force your way in. If you're good enough, they can't ignore you.
Was there always a space for African fashion, or those who were doing designs like yours?
I think there's always a space for good fashion.
Okay.
So if your designs are good and your ideas are good and the execution is all on point, then yes, there'll be a way for you.
Okay.
Like we say, we can't be lazy about what we do. You can't be backwards about coming forward. You've got to say, this is what I do, this is what I'm trying to put across, and put it in front of the right...
And keep going forward. Anna Marie, you know, you're the press director. What kind of press are calling you? Are you starting to get bigger press? Are you noticing that things have changed, or have they always kind of been interested?
They've always been interested.
Really?
Yeah.
All the big names?
All of the big names have always been interested.
Vogue?
Vogue, well, we've had Vogue come to watch the catwalk shows.
Wow.
But the thing is, they don't make a big song and dance out of it.
Yeah.
They will call me on the day, or they'll call me a few days before and say, send a couple of people down. I say, well, I've been knocking on your door all year and you've ignored me all year, but it's only when...
Do they get fro?
Yeah, of course they do.
Of course.
Yeah.
I've got to ask about Arise Fashion Week, because let's not lie, you know, if you're in that kind of sphere of, you know, blackness on Instagram, they really did shut it down. Naomi Campbell was there and, you know, they made a song and dance of it and people were proud. But, you know, there were whisperings that they had banned certain prints. Is that true?
Let's give them props where props is due.
Yeah.
They really bought it,
They did.
but they had the money. So when the finances flow in, they can fly in Naomi and Edward and all the top models because the money was there. And it was, they did have a no print policy. So anyone that was doing print was
I
not
don't believe
welcomed.
that. In an entire collection, or
Well, specifically African Dutch wax print.
wow.
And I think on the one hand, it does state, makes a statement about, okay, African designers have got other things under their belt beyond the print. So it made
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
show out, look, yeah, we can design, we don't just need a print to fall back on. So but on the other hand, if you are someone like me that does use the print, it excludes you, and allowing them to express themselves
But
in a way
did you
that's
did you
expressive.
understand
I understood
why
it.
they
I
why they were
completely
doing it?
understood
Yeah.
And I kind in some ways I applauded it, because it's like this changed the perception of what African fashion is about, and that's what they did. They really did shut it down.
Okay, well, next time, guys, that we have a discussion about fashion, I expect some designs from you and that dress. That's it from me, Juliana Olayinka, and my fantastic guests today, Samson Chaboye and Anna Marie Benedict. And don't forget, Noni's now online. Wherever you are in the world, go to www.yangatv.com to check out every single episode. Join me next time for more Noni Chat. Goodbye.